Okay,
That's
good
good.
morning, everybody. This is Michael Darger with the Extension Center for Community Vitality. I am actually in my office today. I'm a baby boomer. I like my books and my papers. I'm very comfortable in my very paper endowed environment. As you can see, many BRE reports and conference proceedings behind me on bookshelves. So I'm happy. I like paper, but I also like this new technology of Zoom, and we're happy that you've all joined us today. I will play the role of host. For this is our 9th in our webinar series, Retaining Businesses During the Pandemic. And we've slowed things down a bit where we're going to kind of a monthly format, or every month, I should say. We do have another webinar planned. It's not yet on our website or anything, but on August 25th, if you want to make a note, we're going to have a webinar about retaining businesses or keeping businesses when they transfer in business succession context, considering the employment ownership option through employee cooperatives. So we'll have a whole webinar about that, and that will be a 1-hour webinar at 9 o'clock on August 25th. We'll get back to you on that. And so John Bennett is here, and he'll be our technologist today. If you got any problems with the technology or something that goes haywire with Zoom, he's on it. But Jennifer Hawkins is an extension educator in Southeast Minnesota. She's on the community economics team, and she was instrumental in inviting Jamie Sundsbak from the Collider Foundation in Rochester. And they're going to have a conversation today about the 1 million cups and how Jamie's organization pivoted during this pandemic moment to take a very much a face-to-face, in-person organization or their meetings. I don't really know it. This is my learning curve for 1 million cups. I imagine there's some other people who don't know about 1 million cups. And so they'll talk about that. And I want to thank Patrick Donahue, who was at a previous webinar, who's involved with 1 million cups in Eden Prairie. And he's the one suggested having this as a topic. And so once again, folks, if you have ideas, let us know, and we'll send an evaluation out after the webinar. And we'll also have this recorded and posted on our website. You know, you can see it later on or tell your friends about it. So without any further ado, we will introduce Jennifer and Jamie. They'll have about a 20-minute or so conversation. Then there'll be plenty of time for discussion. We commit to being done at 9:30, but if anyone has additional questions and wants to stay extra, we'll have some bonus time for up to 15 minutes until 9:45. So Jennifer and Jamie, take it away.
Wonderful. Thanks, Michael, and good morning, everyone. I'm really excited to have Jamie here with us this morning. Jamie is the Director of Operations at the Collider Foundation, and I've known Jamie for a couple of years. I think, Jamie, you were one of my first folks I reached out to when I started with Extension 3 years ago. So it's been really wonderful to see the work that you've been doing to build the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Rochester and in Southeast over that period of time that I've been in the neighborhood. And we're just really excited to have this conversation about how your work has shifted since COVID kind of came upon us earlier this year. So maybe we can just start out by having you tell us all a little bit about the Collider Foundation and the work that you have been doing with the foundation.
Sure. And, just to start out, thank you so much for inviting me. I am also, I don't really like paper. I'm more of a digital guy, but I was doing a search this morning for some notes that I prepared for this talk. And I found the notes, Jennifer, from our first meeting. I believe it was in 2017. And so I read through that, and I just thought, all the great stuff that the U and that our region is really doing, especially for entrepreneurs. It's just been phenomenal. So thank you for having me today. So a little bit about what we do with the Collider Foundation. Collider supports the Rochester entrepreneurial ecosystem. So we focus on entrepreneurs, small businesses primarily. And we do this in 4 ways. We do this through innovative events, education, space, and storytelling to help foster an inclusive, diverse, and healthy entrepreneurial ecosystem. So that spiel aside, we started as a co-working space about 4 years ago, right here in Rochester. I left my position at the Mayo Clinic doing some really cool work building next generation surgical products, and thought, my passion was more about the Rochester entrepreneurial ecosystem. So I wanted to do something that helps all entrepreneurs. So we jumped into starting a co-working space here about 4 years ago. And about a year and a half ago, we did a pivot. Not that the space wasn't working out. It was more about what we wanted to do and continue to do to support entrepreneurs here in Rochester. So we formed a nonprofit called Collider Foundation, absorbed the co-working space into it, and it really became the revenue generator to help fuel our nonprofit. So just to kind of take you through some of the 4 steps, or the 4 pillars, as we call it, of how we serve our community. As was alluded to before, we were heavy on events, and those events were always in person. Those events were always face-to-face. And we did things like bring external events. So we looked around the United States and said, what can help fuel our entrepreneurial community that's already been done? So we looked at things like 1 Million Cups and things like Techstars Startup Weekend, and said, hey, can we become a chapter here in Rochester of these organizations to bring your content and really your brand to Rochester? We also create Rochester-specific events that can range from our walleye tank pitch competition for the life sciences to various meetups around tech and other things. And then tried to get it deep in the weeds. We also do one-on-one support of entrepreneurs. So we met entrepreneurs one-on-one, face-to-face, to really listen to them and work on how we can support them. So that was all pre-COVID. We also focused again on education, space, and storytelling. And so these were all things that we had to think deeply about as we moved into the new sort of COVID world. And that's kind of what we do and how we support our entrepreneurs here in Rochester.
That's wonderful. And you brought up 1 Million Cups, and I know Michael brought it up earlier. And that is really about, it's 1 million cups of coffee, right? And connecting entrepreneurs by having these convenings where they can connect with supporters and other ideators and make connections. So that I'd like to learn more about 1 Million Cups, how often you've been convening those in person, and then what it looked like to take those online, and kind of some lessons you learned through that.
Yeah. So again, like I was saying, like we didn't want to reinvent the wheel here in Rochester. We wanted to go out and do a survey of, really, we were focused primarily United States, of what was serving the needs of entrepreneurs in other communities. And we stumbled upon 1 Million Cups through a couple of people who had been to Kansas City, which is sort of the home of 1 Million Cups. So 1 Million Cups is put on by the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation, which many of you may know, but it basically, the Kauffman Foundation is focused on intensive research and advocacy for entrepreneurs. And they're sort of really the wellspring of a lot of entrepreneurial thought and events and education. And they spun up this 1 Million Cups concept in 2012. They describe it really as a free program designed to educate, engage, and inspire entrepreneurs around the country. And there's 160 chapters of 1 Million Cups across the nation, which is really cool. To think that on any given Wednesday at 9 a.m. across the country, the same activity is happening, which is so exciting and so powerful. And it's really created a great network for us to plug into, to learn from, and to help other communities really move forward with their entrepreneurial ecosystem. So there's 2 choices for 1 Million Cups. You can be weekly, or you can be monthly. And we chose to sort of dip our toe in the water a little bit. So we focused on monthly to start, and we still do monthly. We've been doing 1 Million Cups here in Rochester for about 3.5 years, which is crazy to think that we've done all of that in 3.5 years. But it's just a wonderful program here in town. So to kind of deep dive a little bit. The basic format is really welcoming two entrepreneurs from our community or region to present just a little bit about their company. So they get about 6 minutes. We don't like to call it a pitch. I like to call it sharing a story of your company and your sort of startup journey. But then we encourage these individuals to actually share a challenge that they're currently facing. And really, that's the power of A Million Cups, where you can go in, you can be honest with a crowd of people and saying, as an entrepreneur, I'm finding a real challenge with hiring technical talent in Southern Minnesota, for example. And then it's the challenge that we throw out to the audience and the attendees to say, how can you help this entrepreneur solve their problem? And it really becomes that audience's challenge to try to solve that problem for that entrepreneur through connections, through being the person in the audience saying, I'm a great technical help with this. I want to help you. That's really that power is, we play this entrepreneurial game a lot where I talk to hundreds of entrepreneurs. And when you talk to them, you say, how are things going? And they say, great. It's fantastic. Everything's fine. And that's a total lie. That's the front that entrepreneurs put on. So by hosting this, we've allowed sort of our entrepreneurs in the region to become more honest and authentic and be able to share, some things that probably are keeping them up at night with an audience, and allowing that groupthink, that power of a crowd to really solve that problem for that entrepreneur. And that's pretty much what 1 Million Cups is. Again, it was always designed to be in person. We definitely felt, and Kaufman felt at the time, that was the way you do it. We've had an amazing amount of entrepreneurs. Many of you may think of Rochester as, a medical city. So you might think that all of our early stage companies are really focused on medical, but that's not true. There's a lot of other businesses in the community and region, and really we've seen a lot more interest in like food and ag and things like that than we have from the medical world. So we really try to keep the entrepreneurs we invite basically industry agnostic. We want them to really show our audience that Rochester's more than just medical and high tech, and there's some amazing other things going on here. And I think it's been a real showcase as well for all of the amazing companies that are coming out of Rochester.
Wonderful. Do you want to talk a little bit about your decision to move 1 Million Cups and some of your other programming online versus just taking a pause, and kind of what that decision-making process looked like, and if you had to modify the programming at all to make it fit an online platform?
So I have to say that, our initial gut reaction was just to stop it and take a pause. If you think back to the early days of COVID, I think many of us thought maybe this would be a little briefer than it turned out to be. I thought when we were allowed to reopen our co-working space after a 6-week pause, that maybe we could get back to, I'll use quotation fingers for those of you that are just listening, but, normal, right? And that turned out not to be the case. So, our team did a lot of soul searching, a lot of thinking over those weeks. And really, it came back to what we ask ourselves every day, which is we need to focus on what the entrepreneurs need. And we took a lot of our inspiration from our entrepreneurs. They didn't stop. They didn't shut down their businesses. They didn't go home and do nothing for 6 weeks. They kept plugging and chugging and doing what they do best to survive. So as ecosystem builders, people trying to help these entrepreneurs, we took a lot of inspiration with that and said, well, we can't shut down either. We've got to pivot. We've got to find a way to make this happen. And the Kaufman Foundation was actually very, very supportive. They offered free Zoom accounts to all of the 161 Million Cups chapters to help transition with online. They had a lot of experts. We have regional sort of contact points with people here at Kaufman, and they were fantastic about checking in with each of our chapters and kind of helping to guide us as we made this transition online. So it definitely wasn't done in a vacuum. It was done with the amazing support of the Kauffman Foundation. And then at the same time, for me personally, I run a co-working space here every day in Rochester. And this is not moving online. So we have so many remote workers in our co-working space. I've watched them for 4 years use tools like Zoom and Google Meet and all of these other tools to basically do their job every day. So I've learned a ton from them. In fact, those are the people that when you say we have challenges, kind of moving online, they all roll their eyes and say, well, of course, like I've done that 3 or 4 years ago. So I took a lot of inspiration and got a lot of support from them as well. So we made the decision ultimately to transition online. We kept the format pretty much the same. We knew that, just reality is attendance numbers would be down. But we felt that we wanted to continue because the worst thing we could do is just shut this down and really lose all these great entrepreneurs and supporters that really had been our core audience. So again, I don't think we did much at first to change the format because we wanted to have it as something that was familiar to people. I can tell you that there's a lot of benefits to transitioning online. One of the things that was difficult in the location we're in, which is One Discovery Square here in downtown Rochester, was some people would always complain that they couldn't see the slides very well. Well, when you're sharing a screen in Zoom, you can definitely see those slides. And then I think we were really blown away with almost seeing a different audience online. So, you have your sort of raving fans of A Million Cups, and they'll digest it however you present it to them because they just love the format and they love to participate. But we started seeing a lot of people that we hadn't seen before, and in building a very different audience and not a local audience. We were starting to see people from the region join us. We were starting to see people from all over the United States would sort of pop in and just see what's going on. And that's sort of I think a big lesson learned that, you can't just take something and move it online and keep it the same. You've got to really think about the audience that you're presenting to. And a real advantage is that this audience may now be on a global scale or on a national scale. And that's a great opportunity to showcase all the amazing things that are going on in your communities.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Sometimes doing things differently opens us up to those insights and ahas and the improvements that shift can have for our work over the longer term. So do you think that any of these aha moments or things that you've learned by bringing it online will change your work going forward, assuming at some point we can feel good about meeting and feel safe meeting in person again? What are your thoughts on, what you might move forward with and maintain as a way of doing your work?
So I think a lot of what we're thinking about, and it's funny that we're talking about the topic of 1 million cups because we're actually pausing our 1 million cups next month. So I'd love to invite you all to be part of 1 million cups next month, but we decided to pause and collect the data that we've, from the last 3 or 4 sessions that we've held online. And at the same time, Kauffman is putting on a 1 Million Cups Organizers Summit for about, I think it's 2 or 3 days here coming up in August. So that's just a huge time commitment. So we decided to get the team to, sit down and go through that. And of course, that's virtual as well. And we really wanted to start brainstorming and thinking about how we start to return to a semblance of normal. And what we've settled on is trying a hybrid approach. So in our location, which again is One Discovery Square downtown here in Rochester, there's a big outdoor patio area. And actually this week, a couple of our team members, we went for a walk and we said, could we re-envision a socially distanced live in-person outdoor event for 1 Million Cups, but at the same time, keeping that hybrid model of being able to, have a really good camera there and be live streaming it out as well. And then, it also provides a safety. If it rains, we can just make that call in the morning and then continue to have it virtually. So we think the hybrid model is what's going to work in the future. There's a ton of challenges with that. You know, you need good bandwidth, you need good equipment, you need good sound. It's definitely a challenge, but it's nothing that many communities can't find someone to help them with that and get them on their team. So I think we were able to do that very well. So, you know, and it's not just a million cups. We're looking at pushing a lot of our content online, from our entrepreneurial events to our entrepreneurial education that we offer. And really, like I was saying when we started, right before we started, I didn't know anything about sort of doing things on the web prior to COVID hitting. I mean, I know a little to be dangerous, but not enough to be an expert. And I really highly encourage you, if you're interested in moving, you know, what you're offering online, really consider your audience first. Ask them what they're looking for. Ask them how they would like to engage, because just creating something to create something is probably not going to work. The other thing I've learned is look to, and this is weird for older people like myself, but watch YouTube. Go on YouTube and find the biggest YouTubers and find how they do things, how they deliver content, what their style is. I had my 15-year-old daughter help me. I said, who do you watch on YouTube? Who are the big influencers? And she said, watch these 3 people. And that taught me so much about video production, how to deliver a message online. You know, it was weird and uncomfortable for me, because it's just, I'm not in that generation where that's the primary way I'm absorbing content. But I learned so much from those individuals, and it's been super helpful. There was one other thing I was going to say, but I can't remember, of course. You know, at the end of the day, there's no easy answers, but it's a great opportunity for you, your organization, your company, or just yourself, if you want to get out there, to really rethink how you do business and how you meet your customers or the people you're trying to serve, and where they're living now versus, and where they're consuming content now versus where they were in the past. We're not going to be able to go back to the way things were in part. And you've already got that playbook written. You know how to engage people one-on-one. But now is that time to really experiment and create a new engagement strategy for people online as well. So that's my long spiel.
That's wonderful. No, this has been great, Jamie. I think we have at least one question in the chat. I can keep talking to Jamie all morning, so I can keep going. But do we want to take a minute and let's see what's in the chat from the participants? Michael?
Yeah, we have one question in there from Susan Odom, who's in the Illinois Extension, and I invite everyone else to put their questions in the chat. If you are call in, then you can raise your hand, or just at the right moment, just unmute yourself and talk out your question. But Susan asked, can you share the names of those you watched on YouTube, Jamie?
So I am doing, sorry, I had something playing in my headphones. I am trying to do double duty right now and posting links right now in the chat. So the first one that I love, and I've loved for years, is This Week in Tech. Not primarily YouTube, but it's a platform about different shows talking about technology, but it's produced in a very professional studio. So I was able to learn about things like how to do effective lower thirds, how to summarize your show notes, because, you know, a lot of people will read a little snippet on YouTube about what is this about, and they're going to make a judgment whether they should watch it or not. So let them know up front what those expectations are. So I learned a lot of that from This Week in Tech. Another one is Marquez Brownlee. He's another tech guy. He puts together absolutely beautiful videos, and I wish I had the money and the time to produce videos like that. But it's more than just polish. I mean, that's a piece of it. If your video looks good, sounds good, people tend to warm up to some of the barriers of what I call faces and boxes. But really just the way he engages with his community is amazing. So when people are writing comments, when people are leaving, sharing, he's going out and he's saying, thank you for sharing this. And he's engaging with the community. And I think that continues the conversation even after the content you've delivered on the web. So those are the two I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah. You see the question from Linda?
Yes. So again, going back. Okay. That's fine.
So the question was, how important is an external microphone? You look and sound professional, but I wondered about the cost. By the way, I love TWIT.
Twit, yeah. I do too. So how important is an external microphone? It's not critical. But again, how you sound and how you look really does help keep everyone's attention. We were fortunate enough to have these available. We have a podcast studio within our co-working space. So we sort of use these, the mics and the preamps that you have to buy and the digital converters. I would say if you go out, there's a product called a Blue Yeti, which is a USB microphone that you can pick up at a Best Buy or on Amazon for about $150. It plugs right into the USB port on your computer. That's going to change the game for you. Like, you will sound so much better. You don't need a pro level mic like this. You don't need any other equipment. I think starting with that Blue Yeti is great. Another thing is just having a better webcam. Right now, unfortunately, I'm talking to you from my iMac webcam, which is a little bit lower resolution. But you definitely want to have a better webcam. They're super hard to come by right now. I've even seen companies like Logitech, which is a primary maker of webcam technology, actually hiking their prices because they know that people will pay for them. But I definitely recommend a higher end webcam. And then bandwidth. You need fast internet. So you don't end up doing the kind of jerky dropping frames thing. That's a huge deal as well. So those are the three things that I think for under, we won't talk, I don't know what everybody's internet prices are, but for under $200, you can look and sound much, much better.
Great tips. Thank you for that. I don't see any other questions in the chat. I imagine I actually have a question, and we have just like 3 minutes left. So Jamie, I mean, like, when things get a little strange in the economy, that's often a time where people decide to start businesses. They have new ideas to meet emerging needs. They may have a transition like furloughed from their job, and it gives them some space to, maybe pursue that idea that they've had for a while. Have you seen some of that happening in the work that you're doing in Rochester? Are you seeing an uptick or a shift in activity?
So traditionally, that's true. In a downturn, you'll see a lot of people shift into starting their own businesses or going back to school, right? That's another big thing. I've started to see some people that are curious, but we live in a very medically focused town. I mean, 1/3 of the entire community pretty much works for Mayo Clinic. When they had their furloughs, we actually used that as an opportunity to deliver some online education. So we hosted, or are currently hosting, a 6-week course on the basics of entrepreneurship. And so that we have seen an uptick in interest in that class, and that's been phenomenal. But I just encourage people, like, if you can stay with your day job and develop this on the side, so we call that side hustle, don't jump into it. Now, unfortunately, if you're in the position where you've lost your job, absolutely, that makes a ton of sense that you have to dive into it. But the other piece of advice I would say is don't do it alone. There's a great community of people that are here to support you. There's a term we use now called ecosystem builder. Those people like myself and Jennifer, people who are really passionate about helping entrepreneurs get solutions to the information or to the questions that they have and the problems they have, much like 1 Million Cups. We do that every day for our entrepreneurs. So we've seen, like I said, a little bit of an uptick, And I would assume over the next few months, we're going to continue to see an interest in people really dipping their toe into the entrepreneurial world.
Great. And so, Jamie, we're right at the 9:30 mark. I have another question, but I just want to let people know this is our soft stop. So we've delivered on a half-an-hour webinar that I think's been quite insightful and useful. But for anyone who wants to stay on, Jamie does have a few more for a minute. So if you have any questions you've been holding back, or the person who's on the phone in wants to unmute, but I'll start with a question just for fun. Jamie, you said that storytelling is part of your foundation's mission, but I don't know, maybe there's a story you could tell us about 1 Million Cups, or about one of those businesses where something happened, just for fun. If there's any anecdotes, that might be fun if you can share one.
So the Million Cups that meant the most to me was, so I'll start. I'll take a step back. The Million Cups before the one I'm going to talk about was, so I always pretty much know who's in the audience, right? So these people filter in, and you say, okay, it's that person. I know that person. And all of a sudden, a bunch of these young kids showed up. And I mean, they were high school age, and it's a Wednesday at 9 o'clock. And I'm seeing these kids sitting there, and I'm like, okay, are you skipping school, or am I going to get into trouble because I'm encouraging you to skip school? Are you going to blame me? And they said, no, our teacher encouraged us to come here, and we're very interested in entrepreneurship. And they sat there, and you could tell they were just eating it up. Like, they listened to this entrepreneur, they felt inspired. And so we ended up taking them around our building. At the time, 1 Million Cups was hosted right here in our building here where Collider is. And they went around, they met the residents, or the members of Collider Coworking, and they started working with various members in a mentorship role, working on a business. And then they ended up joining us for our startup weekend, and they kept continuing to work on business ideas. And in the end, they ended up launching a business, and many of them were still in high school. And it was really a service that you could engage high schoolers to come shovel your driveway, mow your yard, do odd tasks. And it was called Favor. And they took it, they ran with it, and it was just amazing that they could sit there and be inspired by what was going on with 1 Million Cups, jump into it, engage with our community, and then a year later actually stand up at 1 Million Cups and actually talk about their company with the community. And it was the first thing that I think I saw from the genesis of a company to actually seeing this amazing group of students presenting this back where it all started. So that's been the highlight of 1 Million Cups for me so far.
How about what about on the online, the Zoom version of 1 Million Cups? Do you have any stories there yet?
We've had a couple of strange stories, like audio problems, which made things sound really bad. Poor entrepreneurs actually ended up getting pretty much cut off from their whole presentation. So that was a little bit of the negative side. But during the early days of COVID, one of the first ones we launched was Collider, and a bunch of businesses in town got together to create an app that focused on really polling our local restaurants and places that were shutting down, and saying, how can the people in the community support you even though you're shut down? So, where's the best place to go? Instead of going to your favorite restaurant, your favorite coffee shop, your favorite, whatever, small box retailers, I like to say, you could actually use one app to go in, click on it, and find the way to support that individual organization or business. And so we had, as a group, we presented that, and I think that helped bring awareness to the app, as well as it was a great success story. And I think it helped to lift people's spirits during COVID, that, the business community was banding together to help them.
Good stories. Anyone else? Why don't I just ask, in case anyone's interested, you say there's 160 chapters of of 1 million cups around the United States. If someone from a local community wanted to learn what it takes to do this, do they contact the Kauffman Foundation in Kansas, or can they give you a ring, or what would you advise?
So the best thing they can do is, I believe this is the fun of having a computer in front of you. I think it's 1millioncups.com. That will take you to the main 1 Million Cups page. But really, you can learn about it, get a little bit of a feel for it. The best thing you can do is go on that page and find your closest 1 million cups. So that's what we did. We ended up as we were working on 1 million cups here, we ended up going up to the Twin Cities, and we just attended one. So that's the first step. Attend one, understand what's going on, introduce yourself to the organizers after the event, and say, hey, I'm interested in opening a chapter of 1 Million Cups in my community. And they will help connect you in to the Kauffman Foundation. And I find that a better way to do it than just reaching out. I mean, I'm sure Kauffman is more than willing to help, but I think to really understand it, you have to be there a couple times to really understand it. So that's what I would advise. It's a little tough now, or maybe it's easier because most of our Million Cups are online, so you can definitely reach out and connect in and observe a few of them. The other thing I would say is most 1 Million Cups have YouTube pages with all their content on it, so definitely check that out. You could probably just pick a city and say 1 Million Cups in a search bar in YouTube, and you should be able to find it. The stellar communities, I think, that are doing a good job is definitely a lot of our groups in the Twin Cities. I think there's now 2 active groups doing 1 Million Cups, as well as I went to school at North Dakota State. So 1 Million Cups Fargo is by far, and this is me being biased, the best 1 Million Cups out there. They do things in such a unique way. They have such a buy-in from their community. They have even to where the local newspaper is live streaming their event to the rest of the community because they know it's a huge cultural phenomenon really in the Fargo-Moorhead area. So that's another great one to check out.
That's fantastic. And so, Jennifer, do you have any other questions as we wrap up? Or
No, I just dropped a couple links in there for folks if they wanted to do some digging and follow up, and just a huge thanks again to Jamie for sharing your experience working with entrepreneurs and continuing to support their development during this time. So thank you so much.
And so Jamie, we had about 23 people here. I will send out the evaluation form to all of those, and please give us your comments about this webinar and what you think for future webinars. Jamie, I'm pretty sure that we'll be continuing this webinar series for quite a while. So if you do have a session, let's say after your pause in October or November or something, and you would be happy to invite the folks who came to this webinar, please send it to us and we'll put it in our newsletter, and we'll let people know, because I think that'd be a great way to check it out virtually.
Oh, that would be fantastic.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, and everyone have a good day. And again, August 25th is our next webinar. You'll be seeing and noticed about that. That's again about encourages businesses to consider and selling to their employees through the cooperative model as one possible solution when it's time for them to transfer their business to someone else. So with that, we'll wish you a great last day of July, and we'll see you next time.